Hi, everybody. Christy Giannoni back in our last week of discussion board for MPA530 Public Finance and Budgeting. This week, we're taking a look at the non-tax revenue sources for our city. And once again, I'm examining the City of Palmdale's adopted budget for fiscal year 2021. I'm going to be taking a look at the primary non-tax revenue sources, why the city relies on these sources, and any recommended changes. So first, when we're looking at primary non-tax revenue sources, the reason that cities do this and why it's beneficial is you're avoiding taxes, which is always a little easier on the residents to kind of palate or understand. If they can kind of wrap their head around the concept of utilizing a service of the city for revenue, a lot of times they find that easier than taxes. Taxes in general is just kind of an icky word that people want to avoid. So some of these primary non-tax revenue sources that cities tend to utilize to generate revenue are those intergovernmental transfers from the federal government or from state to local government. And again, with these, they usually have stipulations of what they can be utilized for. And then we have these user fees and user charges. These are the direct fees from the cities. These can be utilities, fees for services, fees for facilities, and then these fiscal monopolies. And this is what the government receives from exclusive sales of a private or toll good or service. And the user charges must find a way to exclude them from people not utilizing them. That was one of the most interesting things that I kind of didn't think about when we think about city revenue is how do you really have a service that you can exclude individuals from utilizing that benefit if there's going to be a charge for it? So specifically for the city of Palmdale, their top revenue for non-tax sources is use of property, license and permit, and charges for service. So even though this franchise fee on the line item 64 represents about 8% of the general fund, the revenue is actually a tax. So I avoided taking a look at that one. So for the use of property, that's going to be the city-owned properties that are utilized or rented out to private services. These license and permits, these include the building permits and business licenses within the city. And charges for service include charges for a variety of different things, including recreational services for staff-taught programs, the city's aquatic program, youth sports, adult sports. And this category also includes events and programs such as their concerts at the park, a couple different art and music festivals, and some other community events like their egg hunt and spring festival. So why do the cities and the city of Palmdale rely on these resources? So the user charges and fees really attempt to relieve a burden on the general revenue system on those taxes. And so there's many advantages of user charges. One example is it really improves the operating efficiency as agency staff responds to client demand. And this aligns with the city of Palmdale having a program-based budget because if they have these charges, they can take a look and say, okay, what is the use of this? And this is probably very interesting to examine as the pandemic shut down a lot of the public events that they were able to do, especially for those that were generating revenue like the community, egg hunt. If they weren't able to rent out any of the facilities, how we can re-examine these non-revenue sources. And so none of these are a substitute for taxes. Taxes are always going to be the highest source of revenue for the city. But these are also great because they're looking at ways to creatively utilize the resources that they have, the infrastructure that they have in place to get additional revenue. As far as any recommended changes, especially when it comes to the user fees and the other top three revenue sources that we're taking a look at, use of property, license, and permit. What has to be done is monitoring and adjusting. So if they are not kind of taking a look at it each budget cycle to see if they need to increase these, then it's not going to be as lucrative of a revenue source for the city. So I think that the revenue increases that they're having and how they're utilizing the resources that the city has available to utilize for revenue is good, and I don't have any recommended changes. That's just the recommendation for using these types of revenue resources. So thank you once again for listening to my mini weeks on the city of Palmdale. I look forward to seeing your presentations and best of luck to everybody as we enter the final week.